Hey, welcome back to the channel. You know, if you haven't been paying attention, if you haven't been watching, or if you're just seeing this for the first time, there's a playlist in there, and you can go in there and you can watch all the videos about the church bell. That's what this video is about. I'm still working on restoring the bell down at the church in town, and you might want to catch yourself up before we go into this. But anyways, we got the bell apart in the last episode. What I'm doing tonight is these two pieces here are the two axles that the bell swings on to ring, right? So these shafts are, I don't know if they're gonna show very well, but they're nowhere near round anymore. And you can see where that's so worn. That's the reason why I couldn't just throw some bushings in here, because bushings only work if they have something round to ride on, or else they wear out real quick. So anyways, I've decided what I'm going to do is cut these off. I'm going to cut off these stubs here, both of them, bore a new hole all the way through, and put in a new axle. This is a nice piece of ground shaft. So I'll put new axles in both of them, and then they're going to now ride on these bearings, which amazingly, the hole spacing, I found a bearing that is the exact same width as the pad on the old frames for the bell. Same width, hole spacing is almost identical. I think I can make it work. If they might even work the way they are. And the width of it overall sits right down in the nest. So I don't have to make a plate to adapt over, which wasn't a big deal, but I was going to buy bearings anyways, and I just searched a little longer and I found these, which are really nice problem solver for me. And luckily for me, the bearings were a little pricey. The church agreed to pay for the materials, so that's really good, because I tend to waste a lot of money on things that aren't actually for me, and sometimes my wife, she gets sick of that. Anyway, also I'm going up a size. The original shafts were, I think they started out around an inch, although back then things weren't really precise, and they didn't really standardize dimensions of things yet. So they might have been, one might have been a little under an inch, one might have been over. Who knows? That's the way they did things back then. They didn't have great precision instruments available like we do now. So anywho, I'm cutting these off, which are an inch-ish, and we're going to go to an 1.25 inch shaft, just because I believe it ain't built till it's overbuilt. So we'll overbuild it a little. It lasted 160 years like this. Probably would have lasted another 40 before it fell into the basement of the church. So I'm guessing with this repair, we're going to be good for another 200 years, as long as somebody every 5 years or so puts a shot of grease in here. We're going to be good. It's a good solution to the problem. So I'm going to get ready. I got to get my lathe torn down, and I think I can do them on the lathe. So yeah, I got to monkey around with that. Take the chuck off, put a face plate on, try to get a part mounted on there, see if I can make it work. If not, we'll do something different. But one way or another, we're going to get these drilled and bored, hopefully both of them tonight. We'll see. All right, stay tuned. Well, as you can see, idea here was you put a faceplate on, you clamp the part on. All the machinists know what I'm talking about. And I would much rather do this job in a lathe, because it's just sturdier and it's much quicker to bore a hole in a lathe than it is to do it in the mill and mess around with the boring head and stuff. But this part, whoops, well, I mean, it's not perfectly centered or anything, but we're somewhere near, and there's no way it's gonna swing. It's gonna hit the bed of the lathe by a mile. So we're just gonna have to put it in the mill, and I'll just hold it in the vise and drill it, and use a boring head to bore it. Not a big deal, just not quite as slick as I was hoping for. Yeah, I think this will work fine. You can see kind of, I like to just run through it in my head, sort of, put it in there, make sure everything looks kosher. So what I'm going to do is I'll cut this off in the bandsaw. I'll leave just enough so that I can sweep that and make sure I'm centered over where the axle used to be. And then I'll center drill it, and I'll plow a big hole down through the center, and then bore it in just a pass or two to accept that new axle. So that's the plan. I find that if it ain't one thing, just hang on a second, because it's gonna be a t'other. So my digital readout won't work. I don't know why. We're gonna look, see if we got the juice. Now look at, if I go and start shaking a little bit, dial 911 for Pete's sake. Got power there. Yeah, let's pull out the fuse. We could test the fuse, couldn't we? Fuse is good. That looks like a ground. There ain't no power in there. If only I could see. I guess we have to do it old school, like back in the old days. And they didn't have no digital readouts. Wait. The switch would have to be on for sure. I can never remember if on is the O or the little line. Oh, it's the little line. We got power there. Usually I would have got a shock by now. You guys must be good luck. I got no digits. Well, that's a frustration. There's words. I don't know. Okay, well, you know what? Luckily, this is a job. Don't really need a readout. I learned something interesting. Drilling and it felt kind of clunky. There was a piece down in the bore there. Came out. So what that tells us is that this wasn't cast all one piece. That was a shaft that was pressed in. Probably a big shrink fit, a bunch of porosity in the casting where there's air, you know, see it right there? Kind of nasty. Anyway, doesn't change the plan. We're just gonna bore it a straight hole through, and we're gonna put our own new shaft in there. But it's interesting to see that they built it kind of the same way that I'm fixing it. So I can't be too dumb. Alright, there's a good comparison there. That's the old versus the new. You know, you can see the new ones, not only is it straight and round, but it's also a lot beefier than the old one. Now we just got one more to go. We'll get that knocked out and it should go quicker. Once you do the first one, usually the second one's much faster. Got us a little issue. You can see that the big drill is not following the hole, which is pretty strange, really. Normally you get a pilot hole that big, that drill's going to follow, but I think what's happening is over here is what's left of the old shaft pressed in, and over here it's hitting just iron, so it's walking away from that shaft. So my hole was already a little off center of the casting, and now it's going even further off center. So I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to pick up this, and I'm going to try to figure out a way to correct this, get this back on center. We'll probably have a little gouged area above the pin, but that's okay because there's plenty more pin, you know, down through here to support it. So I'd rather do that than have this end up way off center, or worse yet, crooked and off center. So I'm going to stop now, see if I can get this fixed. I think I should be able to bring this back on center. I'll just have to plunge in here with an end mill or something to try to correct that. But it's kind of interesting. You can actually see the different, I don't know if the camera is going to pick it up, but you can see on the wall here, you can see the edge of the pin, what was the pin pressed in, and then over here is iron, over here is steel, the pin, and that's what's probably the same thing. Probably, yeah, I can feel it right here on this side. So this to this is pin, and you can see how it's sticking up here, and over here is iron, and that's because that iron's softer. It's walking that way. So I gotta fix that. I don't want it to end up way off center. So it's gonna be a little extra, you know, finesse, fiddling around, whatever. Should be able to get it though. Yeah, so you can see in there, see where my drill wandered off.
It's only down a little ways. This below it is all good sized hole that's in the right location. That's all right. We've got so much bearing, so much good iron around there that that'll be just fine. So we got a nice, the top little bit of course is loose because of that hole, but once you get it below that, it's a nice snug fit. In fact, I'll have to tap it in the last little bit, but you can see it leaves me with a little eyebrow here, which not only looks bad, but it's the direction that the load bears, So once I get this in there and pinned in place, I'll fill this in with two-part epoxy. Should fill that gap in and hold it. But honestly, even without that, with so much shaft down inside here, that's not an issue at all. It's really just for looks more than anything, but it will give it a little bit of strength also. So I still gotta, I want to drill and tap a hole in the ends of these axles, so I can I'll make some big washers. I'll put big washers on the end. The reason for that is just in the event that it's never going to happen, but in the event that these bearings fail to the point where they fall apart and all this stuff, I want a washer big enough so that the bell couldn't possibly slide out of here. If you picture this bearing race being on the shaft, all the balls being gone and all this being worn out, I want a big washer big enough so that it won't fit through the housing here, so that there's no way to think it's all. This is how my mind works. Like I said, it's not built till it's overbuilt, but there's no way it could ever get to that point, because somebody would go, boy, the bell's really hard to ring. Somebody should go up and look, and they catch it long before then. But I'm here, and just in case, I'm gonna just make sure. Because once you do a project like this, especially if you put everything on YouTube, everybody knows who did it. And when it has a problem, it has an unlimited lifetime warranty, which I'm good with. I just want to do everything I can to make sure it's never called upon. That's all. Simple enough thing to do. Piece of cake. We'll take care of it. I just couldn't wait any longer. I had to try out the new bearing. So here's the old frame, And remember the old one that the axle set right in here, the old setup. So these are the holes that held on the strap that went over the top. The holes for the new bearing line right up with it. It's going to raise the bell. It used to be centered here. Now it's going to be centered obviously here. But there's no problem with that. All it'll use is a couple inches more rope getting up there. Other than that, everything will function perfectly fine. So that's pretty neat, I think. When you put the collar this way, it ends up lining right up with the inside of the inside of the bracket, just like the old one did. And pretty slick. Pretty pleased with that. Okay, I'll get these axles done. There it is, the final mock-up, right? So we got the new shaft comes all the way through, flush with the back side. The only machining I've got left to do is to drill a hole through here, all the way through. I'll put a bolt through there. That'll keep the shaft from walking in or out. The shaft's a nice tight fit in there, so it won't have any wiggle, you know. This is just like it was on the original. This casting is, you know, the edge of this guy is right in line with the edge of this frame. So that should work perfect. If for some reason we need more, we'll just flip this bearing around, which will bring this collar out here and will give us a little more room if it seems like it binds or whatever. And then, like I said, I just found these washers. I just had to cut the outside down smaller. And that is just the absolute worst case scenario to keep this whole thing in the event of a massive failure. This won't fit through anymore. It would hit the casting, and it would keep the bell from you know, disconnecting from here and falling through, which couldn't possibly happen. These bearings are rated, I don't remember exactly, but they're rated for about 7,800 pounds each. So there's two of them, and they're rated for constant RPMs. I don't remember, 7,000 RPMs or something like that. And this thing has like 1.3 RPM, and it only happens for 1 minute, you know? So I think it's safe to say this is going to last what you and I would call forever. I think before there's warranty work involved in this repair, I will be returned to dust and somebody else will have to deal with it. But the next time, all they should have to do is go, oh, Sealmaster TB20 bearing, I need 2 of them. Boop, put them on. Worst case, they take the bolt out that holds the shaft in, drive it out, put in a new piece of shaft, put on a new bearing, back in business. They shouldn't have to take the bell apart really that much. So that's it. I've got one more thing to do, just drill a hole through here, and then the machining is finished. Just like that. I did realize though, as I was drilling, I can't use a bolt, at least not on this one, because the wooden wheel bolts here, and it kind of, you know, bolts here, and it's cut to form right around here. So if there was a bolt head sticking out, or a nut, it would hit the bolt. It wouldn't work. So what I'm going to do is just drive some roll pins down in there, so there won't be anything sticking out. It'll just be a hole with a pin down in it, and that'll keep those from walking out, and we're good. So the machining, I think, is done. I don't have to machine anything there because those bearings just bolted right on. Slicker than duck poop on a wet board. All right, I think that's a wrap on the machining portion of this program. I hope. I can't think of anything else, but, you know, something will probably pop up, and that's fine. Now we move on to some pretty work, getting things cleaned up and painted and all that stuff. I want to thank you for spending your time with me. I want you to tell your friends they really should be watching The Town Tinker. It's very, very important. And not only watch it, but also click subscribe and be a bell clicker on her. Sure. So thanks for watching. I appreciate your time. God bless you. God bless the United States of America.